It's my way or the highway. I can guarantee everyone has had this statement said to you one time or another while trying to compromise with someone about any sort of problem. Now, with a much too long history of me enjoying to argue with people, I know the concept of compromise all too well, because sometimes the argument just isn't worth it. With this, most of you probably don't want anything to do with compromise, because I know I don't either when I have to do it. But listening to an opposing solution is an interesting way of looking at a situation. But I will say, after this, you'll see why listening and compromise are what we need in today's society. So, nowadays it seems that everyone has their own way, i.e., the statement, my way or the highway. Now, with that, no one is willing to sit there and look at an opposing view as to why that could be an acceptable way to handle something. Like for me, let's say I am a Republican, and I am a radical Republican. And I apologize for the politics that are being interpreted and integrated into the speech, because that is actually the best way to describe it. And then, so I mean no offense to anyone, these are just examples. Let's say I'm a radical Republican. I have no intention of listening to anything that a Democrat says, because it's a Democrat, and purely because it's a Democrat. Now, this kind of closed-mindedness has everything to do with how we see other people and how we believe what they believe. Or, my apologies, we have an idea of what they believe, and we have no intention of actually listening to what they might believe and trying to look for the good in it. So, it's the same thing for many major issues nowadays. When you're talking about euthanasia, when you're talking about, when you're talking about abortion, when you're talking about gun control, when you're talking about anything that has a major idea and a major part in today's society, that has to do with closed-mindedness. But the concept of compromise is something that has been lost throughout a long time of us spreading further and further towards this closed-mindedness of what someone else's idea might be. So, the concept of compromise, I relate it best to a bell curve. The idea that if we listen, not every idea is a bad one just because it's someone else's. Now, if you think of this like a bell curve, as stated in Philip Bump's article, over time, the bell curve flattens over time until it's barely a bell curve at all. It's just an even distribution, which I guess if you want to compare to a grade book, there's as many A's on one side as there are F's on the other side as there are C's in the middle. And more accurately, in politics and in most political talking points, there's more radical conservatives as there are radical liberals, and there's not enough people in the middle. But if you have a bell curve, where the more people are in the middle, as opposed to being a radical conservative or a radical liberal, you are able to compromise. And you're able to see the other side for the good ideas that they might have. Now, I'm not saying just because it's someone else they have a good idea, but I'm saying at least listen to it and be willing to compromise. Now, the best way to explain it, with the bell curve concept in mind, has to do with a football field. You have one football field inside of a stadium. Let's say it's Valley. Now, one end zone represents one side of an issue, the other end zone represents the other side. Now, roughly in 1992 to 1994, more people were inside the 35 to 50 yard line on either side of the half field than there were anywhere else. It was an actual bell curve. There are more people in the middle, and that's when things get done, when people are in the middle and they're not radical and they're willing to be moderately either side of the issue. Like, when you are listening to someone else, that doesn't mean that they have a bad idea. It means that maybe you're able to compromise so you can have parts of their good idea and parts of your good idea. But now, over time, from 1994 to 2017, the median Democrat as well as the median Republican have spread so far out into those end zones. You have people on one issue all the way over in Ferguson Hall, and you have people on other issue almost out in the rodeo dorms. And they are so close-minded that they have no idea what the other side even thinks because they're not willing to listen to it. And that is when compromise becomes undoable. Now, not only does this apply to politics, and I do understand I've talked about that a lot because that is, in my opinion, the easiest way to explain it. It applies to society in general, in anything. When you're having a simple conversation with someone in a class about, let's say, history and why someone did what they did. Like, let's say you're discussing Napoleon. Let's say you're discussing Napoleon. What he did might not be seen as a good thing by a lot of people. It might be seen as a bad thing by a lot of people. Or even when you're trying to decide is something as simple as where you guys are going to go get food with your significant other. Listen to their idea, unless they have the idea that I have that I don't care. But listening to other people and trying to understand what they're thinking and why they're thinking the way they are is essential in compromise and trying to get things done in today's society. Now, today I know I have thrown a lot of information at you, and I know there are many parts of it that you don't want to acknowledge because it isn't what you believe. But I challenge you, starting with what I have said here today, to listen. Maybe even look for a compromise that can make you more happy than walking away from a conversation frustrated and disappointed. Because is my way or the highway really the only way?